Carl Jung said, "This is precisely the risk that the modern man may wake up one day and realize that he has lost half his life." Therapeutic medications have become one of the most common forms of treatment for anxiety disorders and depression. However, these drugs are not very effective in curing people and often only become crutches for people with lifelong psychological disabilities. Fortunately, there are alternative ways to treat anxiety and depression. In this video, we are going to turn to Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychiatrists in history, for drug-free advice on how to find a cure for these psychological disorders. Carl Jung said in his work The Symbolic Life that the government still holds firmly to the idea that anxiety and depression disorders have their origin in alterations within the brain. Unfortunately, many ordinary doctors still advocate this to the detriment of their patients, whom it shows were producing mass. Almost all of these patients have been convinced by medical dogma that their illness is physical in nature, and Jung believed that most cases of anxiety and depression are not the product of a defective brain but of a defective lifestyle. The first step in Jung's treatment method was, therefore, not a prescription of medication but a dose of psychological knowledge about what to expect from life and understanding what it takes to change. Jung pointed out that many people believe that life should be easy, that suffering should be minimal, and that difficulties should always be avoided. However, Jung used to be direct with his patients by telling them that life is not easy and comfort and peace are not our natural state. Or as he ultimately wrote, it is very unlikely that there can be a therapy that eliminates all the difficulties. The human being needs the difficulties, they are necessary for health. What concerns us here is only an excessive amount of them. Accepting that difficulties are inevitable and that nothing worth achieving is easy places us on the firm ground of reality from which we can change. Because when we accept that life is difficult, we will also realize that only through a strengthened character do we have any chance of leading a good life. On the other hand, if we remain trapped in the illusion that life should be easy, we will be less motivated to overcome a weak character. We will falsely hope that if we simply give it time, life will become easier. As Jung wrote in his work Man and His Symbols, life is a battlefield. It always has been and always will be, and if it were not so, existence would come to an end. At the end, there is another piece of psychological understanding that Jung considered crucial for his patients to understand, and this was that our problems exist in the present and that current problems are not solved by digging into our past. Many people like to believe that only when they have determined why they are as they are can they move forward in life. But Jung believed that an excessive fixation on the past was simply an evasion tactic used to avoid the difficult task of facing what must be done now. People should know that not only the neurotic but everyone naturally prefers never to look for the causes of any inconvenience in themselves but to distance them as much as possible from themselves in space and time. Otherwise, they would run the risk of having to make a change for the better. Compared to this odious risk, it seems infinitely more advantageous to blame another person. With these doses of psychological understanding, Jung would turn to the first practical step in his treatment method, and this was to help his patients face what he called the shadow, or as he writes, the first requirement of any radical psychological method, let the conscience confront its shadow. The shadow is the Jungian term for the elements of our character that we deny and force into the unconscious due to shame, insecurity, or censure. In other words, it is the side of our personality that we want so much to hide from others as well as from ourselves. There is no doubt that human beings are, in general, less good than they imagine themselves or want to be. As we explained in a previous video, we all carry a shadow, and the less it is embodied in conscious life of the individual, the blacker and denser it will be. Jung believed that facing the shadow was crucial in the process of personal change for several reasons. Firstly, we do ourselves no favors by denying the lower parts of our personality. We simply lose control of how and when these traits appear. On the other hand, if we recognize a character flaw, we can learn to control its expression and thus minimize the damage it causes in our life. Or as Carl explains, anything conscious can be corrected, but anything that escapes into the unconscious is out of the reach of correction, and with its uncontrolled growth, it is subject to increasing degeneration. Thank God, nature ensures that unconscious contents burst into consciousness sooner or later. But the shadow is not only composed of weaknesses, some of its elements are strengths that we repressed in our youth because our fellow family members or society in general gave us the false impression that these traits were bad. Some people, for example, repress the ability to express anger or the ability to defend oneself. Another benefit of becoming aware of the shadow, therefore, is that we gain access to character traits that promote life. Or as Carl writes, the shadow is simply something inferior, primitive, unadjusted, and clumsy, not totally bad. It even contains qualities that would somehow vitalize and beautify human existence. A way to take shadow awareness is observing the weaknesses, faults, and insecurities of the people close to us. Because not only do most of us repress similar character traits, but we also tend to project elements of our shadow onto other people. Therefore, by paying attention to what character traits of our friends and family bother us, we can also glimpse our own shadow. In addition to observing others, another way to bring the shadow to the light of conscience is to reflect on the reasons for our actions, especially those of which we are ashamed, and be open to self-criticism when necessary. Because, as Jung often points out, the only thing that prevents us from seeing our shadow is the inability to be honest with ourselves. Along with taking greater experience of the shadow, another fundamental aspect of the Jung treatment method was to help his patients find meaning in their lives. Jung believed that when you are trapped in a deep depression or consumed by an anxiety disorder, to be cured, you must discover a role as one of the participants in the sacred drama of life. To understand what was meant by this, we can turn to an encounter that Jung had with a chief of the Pueblo tribe in the first half of the 20th century. Jung was discussing with this man the traditions of his tribe when the chief made the following comment: "Yes, we form a small tribe, and these gringos want to interfere in our religion. It would not be appropriate for them to do so since we consider ourselves the children of the Father, the Son, that being that is there," pointing at the sun. "That is our Father. Every day we must help him rise above the horizon and to cross the sky. We are not carrying out this action only for ourselves, we do it for America, we do it for the whole world." Jung understood that for many in modern times, this statement would sound crazy and archaic, but as he points out, the members of this tribe did not suffer like us. They were not infected by neuroses, anxiety disorders, or depression. They were not filled with medication every day, and they were not weakened by addictions. Rather, this tribe was made up of highly functional individuals who saw themselves as doing their duty as actors in the sacred movie of life, and their lives were full of meaning and purpose. Or as Jung wrote, "These people have no problems, they have their daily life, their symbolic life. They wake up in the morning with a feeling of their great and divine responsibility. They are the children of the Son, the Father, and their daily duty is to help the Father cross the horizon, not only for themselves but for the whole world." Jung compared this lifestyle with that of a woman from the West whom he had the opportunity to meet. In the words of Jung, this woman had a compulsive habit of always traveling from one place to another, constantly in search of something, although she could never really find what she was looking for. "I was surprised when I looked into her eyes, the eyes of a hunted animal, cornered, always searching in the hope of something. She is possessed. The question is, and why is she possessed? Because she does not live a life that has meaning. Hers is a completely grotesquely banal life with no meaning at all. If she dies today, nothing has happened, nothing has disappeared because her existence simply meant nothing." This compulsive search infects many in the Western world. Some run from one destination to another, some pursue romantic partners, others are compulsive seekers of money, prestige, fame, or recognition on social media. But whatever external form the underlying motivation takes, it is the same, seeking to escape the banality of their existence, seeking to fill the void of emptiness that comes from living a meaningless life. But as Jung explains, this void cannot be filled with things or even with experiences. What fills this void is knowing that we are living in a way that makes a difference. Or as he writes in relation to the woman he met, "However, if she had the ability to express, I consider myself the descendant of the moon. Every night I have the responsibility to assist the moon, my mother, to cross the horizon. That would present a completely different perspective. In that case, its existence would come to life, it would acquire meaning both in its constancy and for humanity as a whole. That provides peace. When people feel that they are living as actors in the divine drama, that provides the only real peace and fulfillment that we can hope for. A life lived in service of something greater than ourselves allows us to endure hardships with grace and not be consumed by suffering and sadness. It also helps us to overcome fears and anxieties because, instead of seeing ourselves as isolated individuals lost in a chaotic universe, we see ourselves as part of a larger order, with responsibilities and a purpose that are divine in nature. Jung believed that the absence of this meaning in the modern world is one of the primary causes of widespread psychological suffering. He observed that as societies abandon religious and mythological frameworks, they also abandon the symbolic life that had given their existence meaning. Without a meaningful context in which to live their lives, many people in the modern world feel lost, empty, and directionless. Jung encouraged his patients to seek out and create their own meaning, to find or rediscover symbols and myths that could guide them in life. He believed that this process of meaning making was not only crucial for psychological health but was also the foundation of a life well lived. As Jung stated, the man who is in the middle of a work and whose life is filled with creative achievement always has difficulties, but the creative achievement always allows him to overcome them. Even more, it gives him the strength to live on and to face the most terrible realities, because he knows that his life is worth living. In conclusion, Jung's approach to treating anxiety and depression was not to numb the mind with drugs or to focus solely on the past, but to help his patients understand the realities of life, confront their shadow, and find meaning and purpose in their existence. This approach, although challenging, offers a path to true healing and fulfillment, one that goes beyond mere symptom management to address the deeper issues at the core of human suffering. Remember to subscribe and hit the like button for more videos and to help us reach more people.